Hello, and thank you for coming today. Over the next 15 to 20 minutes, Team Magnify will be sharing our review of leadership expert Jennifer Garvey Berger's Unlocking Leadership Mindtraps: How to Thrive in Complexity. In this, her third and most recent leadership advice book, Mrs. Berger alerts aspiring leaders to 5 mind traps developed by our evolving brains to make sense of our ever-changing world. Mrs. Berger explains the dangers of the 5 mind traps: simple stories, rightness, agreement, control, and ego, and then provides guidance on how to escape their negative impact on our decision-making. Choosing this book for our group project was an easy decision. The Amazon reviews of Unlocking Leadership Mind Traps are stellar, and Berger's previous books were also very highly rated. The subject matter seemed more aligned with this course than some of the other selections. Jennifer Garvey Berger is a founding partner of CEO Cultivating Leadership, a consultancy that serves executives and executive teams in the private, nonprofit, and government sectors around the world. Her clients include Google, Microsoft, Novartis, Wikipedia, and Oxfam International. Jennifer holds a doctorate in adult development from Harvard University and was an associate professor at George Mason University. Sit back and enjoy the rest of this presentation. Please hold your comments and questions till the end.
The interactions that we have on a daily basis are very complex, and much more complex than they've been in the past. Things are no longer moving at a slower pace. Especially in an ICT profession, things are changing at an unprecedented rate and can be very unpredictable. Well, in this world of unpredictability, we tend to rely on our reflexes to move forward. The problem is that these reflexes are often not made for the ever-changing environment that we are in. This leads us to fall into a mind trap. There are 5 mind traps that the author, Jennifer Garvey Berger, identifies and discusses how to escape them. Those 5 mind traps are being trapped by simple stories, rightness, agreement, control, and our ego. These 5 mind traps correspond to the 5 core chapters of the book. We will begin our discussion of these 5 mind traps with John discussing the mind trap of simple stories. Our desire for a simple story blinds us to a real one.
Throughout human development, mankind has created simple stories that reduce our anxiety by answering existential questions. We do it to make sense of disjointed pieces of our lives and the larger universe around us. There are several subconscious shortcuts that we take that Mrs. Berger says lead us into the simple story mind trap. 1. Our brains want a beginning, a middle, and an end to a story. We want to know cause and effect to make sense of things. But often, there are too many interconnected variables to accurately explain why something happened. 2. We oversimplify the story in the past and imagine an equally simple path going forward, and both are probably wrong. In our minds, the story we've been through is much tidier than what actually happened and less inevitable than we remember. We try to project the story into the future, although infinite different possibilities exist. Our brains seek to create patterns subconsciously, then provide us with a conscious, "Oh, I've seen this before" feeling on which we base our decisions. And 3, we create characters and then select data to support our beliefs. We simplify people into one-dimensional stereotypical characters. Then, once we see them that way, we only accept data that supports that impression. So, how do we avoid falling into the simple story mind trap? Mrs. Berger gives us 2 pieces of advice. Number 1, when you find yourself in conflict with another person, maybe a colleague or someone in your personal life, ask yourself this key question: how is this person a hero? Reframe the person's actions, reverse your roles and see it from their point of view to explore alternative possibilities. They may see themselves as the hero in the story, and you may be the villain causing the problem. Number 2, avoid accepting the simple story by making the story more complex. Develop a key habit. Carry 3 different stories. When you hear yourself thinking, "I've seen this before and I know how it goes," remember that no 2 situations are exactly alike. Imagine several alternative outcomes in addition to the simplified one. The more stories you can imagine, the more clearly you can see complexities of a situation, which leads to better decision making. Mrs. Berger's point is that while we can't avoid telling stories, we can remind ourselves that they are simple. And in this ever more complex world, simple stories are usually wrong. So avoid this mind trap. Interrupt your old way of thinking to expand your possibilities.
Human certainty is more a feeling than a fact. Our sense of being right is an emotion more than it's a thought. Most of the time, we justify our decisions after we've made them, rather than using facts to make our decisions beforehand. This is known as post-decision justification. We typically only deliberate thoughtfully on a small percentage of our decisions. Most decisions are based on feelings. We have a hard time telling the difference between our opinion and the truth. And this shapes what we notice and how we treat other people. Feeling wrong is the same as feeling right until we're informed that we're actually wrong. We feel comfortable, confident, and normal when we feel right. There are times when it is or was advantageous for us to assume that we're right. But not believing that we're right can lead to indecision. A feeling of rightness can kill curiosity and openness to new data. This also impacts how we interact with and treat other people. The problem isn't rightness. The trap is that sometimes you feel right and you're wrong. One key question to ask yourself: what do I believe and how could I be wrong? You want to spark curiosity again. Differentiate between statements of truth and statements of belief. Sometimes we don't actually know what we believe. Another key: listen to learn. Asking ourselves questions is important, but so is asking other people questions and listening to their replies. Many people listen to win rather than seeking true understanding. Many people listen to fix rather than seeking what is true. These two types of listening start with the belief that we are right in some sort of way, but it's okay to be wrong. Being wrong is crucial to human cognition. It's not a flaw. It's vital to how we learn. A good way to challenge your assumption of being right is to reflect and be open to accountability. A good way to hear others is to be fully in the moment. Don't leave before you leave.
It's human nature to desire agreement with those around us. We want to agree with those we are working with because it gives us a sense of connection. However, longing for that agreement and connection can have negative consequences, such as social loathing. This is when you withhold new information. New information may complicate a disagreement even more, so you choose to withhold it in order to reach an agreement sooner. You may also be quick to compromise in order to save time. We're taught at a very early age that when we disagree with each other, we should compromise. Both sides get a little bit, so it's fair for everyone, right? Well, not exactly. This tends to be the wrong way to go because it merges two options into one. On the opposite side of this, we are unable to come to a compromise. Our tendency is to abandon all hope of compromising, collect a group around us, and polarize. So the first step of unlocking this mind trap is to remake what agreement and conflict mean. When there is a disagreement, we need to ask ourselves a key question. Could this conflict serve to deepen a relationship? The goal of the conflict should not be to win. The goal should be a resolution that results in the best end product. To reach this resolution, we must listen to learn so that we may fully understand the other person's perspective. Edmondson, in her 2012 book, Teaming, states that teaming blends relating to people, listening to other points of view, coordinating actions, and making shared decisions. We must listen to learn why the other person believes in their solution in order to make the best shared decision. We almost must make it a habit to disagree to expand our set of possibilities. In doing this, we have to break the habit of falling back on answers that have worked before because we cannot know for sure that they will work this time. Disagreement is inevitable because there will never be an instance where we are able to agree on the one best solution because that simply doesn't exist. However, we may work together to create one acceptable solution. A situation where this is not the answer is when you receive a stern demand regarding a project direction from your supervisor. I wouldn't suggest that you disagree with your supervisor's request if it means putting your job at risk. On the other hand, if you have a leading supervisor that encourages differing viewpoints, you may explain to them why you feel your situation is better for the group, listen to their explanation for their solution, and then come to a shared decision on the best direction. One saying that I hear often is that we are paid to think. Simply agreeing with your supervisors or anyone else's opinion doesn't allow you to think, which robs you of good ideas.
In Chapter 5, we turn to the topic of control. Trying to take charge strips you of influence, in particular in a complex and unpredictable world, which ironically results in a decrease in the ability to influence the outcome of a situation. Professor Bandura is quoted as saying, "The capacity to exercise control over the nature and quality of one's life is the essence of humanness. It is only natural that we humans wish to control our reality. We are shapers of reality. However, while predictable problems can be readily addressed, unpredictable and complex ones are generally futile to control. This concept is particularly relevant to ICT leaders who may be accustomed to taking control of a situation to lead themselves and their cohort. Let's dive into facets of this topic a bit more. First, while we believe that being in control is critical to our success and happiness, the assumption that we can control emergent outcomes of complex systems leads to perverse consequences. Such consequences often lead to the need for reshaping of an organization and removal of employees, as discussed in Watkins, Leading the Team You Inherit. When we can't control big things, we substitute smaller ones, yet it is generally ineffective to try fixing complex problems with simple, short-sighted solutions. Finally, if things seem out of control, we blame ourselves or even others, though generally it's that we couldn't and they couldn't control the situation. With that context in mind, let's look to how we can redirect our need for control to influence the possible outcome of a situation. We may not be able to directly determine the outcome, but we can augment options and prioritize. This can take the shape of cultivating emerging possibilities. For example, in cultivating everyday courage from Detert, the theme of competent courageousness encourages, amongst other things, choosing your values and basing your battles on those, and then broader objectives to earn the trust and gain influence over a situation. Next time you find yourself in need of control that you cannot have, consider these questions. What can I help enable? What would enable me? To avoid digging yourself into a grave, experiment at the edges rather than the core.
Chapter 6 details about the ego in the individual that affects oneself and others while not being aware of flaws. Humans grow and develop from past events, but would carry a static perspective while in the present. We often defend our present selves compared to seeing change that can lead to growth. People often hide and defend their weaknesses to protect their egos. Most would blame others, argue, and even escalate situations. Energy is put in to defend weakness rather than overcoming them. Awareness is needed to recognize these patterns in ourselves and others. We can use other people's perspectives along with principles in order to function in society. People take them in as the right way to act and keep such mindsets throughout our lives. A mindset that's stagnant by protecting ideals or not learning from different perspectives does not lead to growth. A mentality that can change by learning divergent outlooks and concepts while remembering how we are on a path to development. A method to escape from traps made by the ego is being curious. Curiosity is needed to make sense of oneself and the world, to change perspectives. Another is self-confidence, which people often lack, that can hinder development. One can gain confidence by learning about how there is a world of possibilities rather than the present reality. Introspection can help with how you see things through your perspective. Learning about this can help us know where you have to develop and where you can grow next. There are 5 crucial questions one can ask themselves. Was at stake for me here? Was the hardest part of this? Was the best part of this? How do I know this is true? One would need to not ask these questions once, but at least 3 times to make sure to find a next step to development. Thinking about who we will become next and knowing how to change is beneficial to growth. Changing can help us release us from defending our ego and help us become more curious to improve ourselves. Chapter 7 details about key questions and habits in order to escape from traps made from the mind, in the form of a metaphysical ladder, with each rung being used to escape them. The first is connecting with our purpose, which means making a shortcut to decisions to lack complexities that surround a person. The quest for a deeper purpose can help us strive to being a happier and healthier person than we are without one. Next is making a connection to our bodies, such as knowing signals from it. We often have emotions and physical symptoms that would show a psychosis such as anxiety or depression. It's important to notice anything about yourself you may ignore or even hide. Connecting with our emotions can help us deconstruct negative mental states. An example would be anxiety and how we often have emotions of fear and excitement that would be attached to such a mental state. The next rung is connected with ourselves and others through compassion. Empathy for others can aid us with connecting with people without judgment while being curious and kind. Compassion towards ourselves can do the same thing, as it can allow us to be kind to others while also people being kind to us and becoming more curious about them. Ultimately, there is no method to completely escaping from all the mental traps due to our changing world and the current system that can't keep pace. The system doesn't mean we can't grow as individuals, but we can become better as a group in order to make the system better.
ICTs are constantly changing. It's easy to become trapped by simple stories, rightness, agreement, control, or ego. It's especially important not to maintain a static perspective. That's being trapped by ego. Things are constantly changing, and we need to focus on what's next, rather than being stagnant after a few past wins. Probably the least practical strategy for an ICT leader. Often ICTs demand a degree of predictability. The mind trap of control seems to be the least practical through the framework of an ICT. Control can never be guaranteed, but with information and proper data, it can certainly be realized to a greater degree with ICTs that if we rely not just on our own human ability, but also technology, we can compensate in that regard. This book does a fantastic job of looking into the ways that our psychology informs our ability to lead, but it could leverage external devices, such as information communication technologies, to compensate for human inadequacies.